are people mad at me? Did I do okay? Is everything okay with me? And that's a question that we live with a lot of times, and that sometimes becomes the driver of our behavior.
The Fawn Response really says, I can't feel safe until I know you like me. If we are constantly abandoning ourselves and we're always saying yes when we want to say no, the relationship won't last for that long. I think what's less talked about is grieving relationships with people that are alive and well. Those relationships will never be. And grieving the parent that they can't be for you, an ex, a friend, a sibling relationship, whatever relationship it is, that grief is so important. We can't just jump straight to acceptance without first acknowledging the pain.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about the issue seeking approval from others. So I think the question that we often live with is, are people mad at me? Did I do okay? Is everything all right? Is everything okay with me? And that's a question that we live with a lot of times, and that sometimes becomes the driver of our behavior. And someone has written a great book about it. It's called Are You Mad at Me? And I was so happy to see it because it addresses a lot of the questions that the internal struggle that we have within ourselves. So I'd like to welcome our guest, Meg Josephson, today. Welcome, Meg.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Meg, you are a therapist?
Yeah.
But this is a question that's very close to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about your own story and what prompted you to write a book? Because as a therapist, you see all sorts of problems, right?
Absolutely.
But this is something that you felt that was close to your heart and you wanted to address. Can you give us a little bit of background of your story?
Yeah, it's a good point. As a therapist, we're witnessing, there's so many problems to choose from that I could write about, and to hone in on one. I definitely witness what you described as, are people mad at me? Am I bad? Is something wrong with me? Am I okay? That sort of feeling, to me, is really the heart of the book, and a lot of what I witness in my clinical work as well, and is a feeling that's very familiar to me. I grew up in a childhood that was quite volatile. My dad struggled with addiction, and he had there was a lot of rage. There was a lot of volatility. Things could just change really quickly. And I found as a child, just focusing on being perfect and good was sort of my way of feeling in control of an environment that otherwise felt quite out of my control. And so this wondering, is he mad at me? Am I okay? Am I pleasing him? That was really protective and necessary growing up. But I found that when I left that environment, I was at school now, I was working and starting my career, I was noticing that feeling was still there, but it was just showing up in different ways. So I often give this example of, instead of analyzing if my dad had been drinking or if he was upset with me, I was now overthinking when my boss said, "Hey, do you have a sec?" And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm in trouble.
What's going on? Yeah.
I'm going to get fired. So always feeling like I've done something wrong. I'm in trouble. Someone's mad at me. That was just this constant feeling. I then go back to school to study, to become a psychotherapist. I eventually start my own practice. And this feeling was just a really common thread amongst people with such different experiences, such different childhoods and backgrounds, different ages and identities. But this feeling of, are you mad at me, as sort of the thread was really pervasive. And so it was really intentional for me to have the title, Are You Mad at Me? Of course, as we'll talk about, the book is about the Fawn Response. But because the Fawn Response is not super known, or at least when I started it, it wasn't super known in psychology, I really wanted a title that spoke to that feeling. And so I think hopefully it does. It does for me personally. So
it's very on target. Are you mad at me? It really is something that we think about a lot, especially I think nowadays when social media is so dominant in our lives, and you are constantly looking out for cues like, did so-and-so like my post? I would sell my mom out. She was always like, you didn't like my post. And I was like, have not checked social media today.
Yeah.
But looking for that approval or lack thereof has really taken up so much of our attention.
Totally. I mentioned social media. Why I think "Are you mad at me?" and seeking approval is especially so common now. And I think social media plays a really big role. And I talk about how we have so many ways to connect now. DMs, FaceTime, iMessage, WhatsApp, and why did they like my Instagram story but didn't respond to my text? And we have all these sources of approval. And that wasn't always the case. So, but when we have those sources of approval and they're not met, or we don't receive that approval, it leaves us feeling disappointed or deficient or that we're doing something wrong. We anticipate the dopamine of that like or that response. And when we don't get it, we feel disappointed or it triggers rumination. And so social media just adds, I think, such a complexity to it.
Absolutely. And it's almost like you expect something, but the rules aren't really stabilized yet. Like, how long should it take for someone to like a post? Like, I think because it's such a gray area.
Totally.
And there's not a social norm for it. It's really
such a good point.
Our interpretation, and it's really our narrative that's driving that interpretation. I wanted to go into fawning because that's such an important part of your book. But while you were talking, I know it's not in the talking point, something that's sort of, I remember watching The Office, Michael Scott, and we talked about whether or not he had narcissistic personality disorder before. But I think that's mostly in the beginning of the show. Towards the end, you see his constant, desperate need for approval, right? Wanting to be liked, can't really take a criticism, and trying to make peace with every single employee. But at the same time, he sort of knows he has the power for disproving others. So I'm curious for the people who are constantly seeking that approval, because I'm really thinking back to my childhood. My father didn't really drink, but he did have a temper. And I feel like all the dads that generation just felt really free expressing their
a lot of anger. Yeah.
A lot of anger. So I remember him being angry, but I do also see how, as I grew up, I see how that anger is powerful. And sometimes I'd blow up.
Totally.
Because I know how powerful that is, how manipulative that could be. And it's something that I had to really work on as an adult. So I'm wondering, because when we look at the title of the book, Are You Mad at Me? It almost feels like you're in a more vulnerable position where you're seeking approval. Do you find that people like that can also be the ones withholding approval and knowing how powerful that is?
Oh, such an insightful question. And I really relate to what you just said. Personally, I think Are You Mad at Me? I think of it more as the inner state, the insecurity that's happening internally that may not be visible to other people. Michael Scott's a great example where he's super insecure, but on the outside, he may seem confident and powerful and authoritative, but internally, he's deeply insecure about his relationships and his singlehood and financial status and all of these things. And so I think of Are You Mad at Me as that. It's the inner, it's the self-esteem, it's the self-trust, and how we behave and treat our relationships is a mirror into how we are seeing ourselves. We're reacting in a way that we've witnessed. And so similarly, although my dad had such anger and I was so scared of him, I would also get really angry. And I was the sibling who would blow up and fight back. And even though I also had this, Are you mad at me? And I was this perfectionist, people pleaser type as well. But I think what you're getting at here is that because that anger is shoved down, I shouldn't be feeling this, or we don't witness anger being handled in a healthy way. We only see it in rage or silent treatment or slamming doors or name calling. We don't learn how to manage that anger when it comes up. Anger is a beautiful, healthy emotion. It's telling us something isn't right here. Something's unjust. A need isn't being met. But when we're witnessing it in extreme ways, and then we ourselves don't get to feel that anger in childhood, we blow up And whether it's in childhood, adulthood, when we're not able to have a relationship to our emotions, that anger is going to come out in some way, shape, or form. So certainly, I think that "are you mad at me" thinking doesn't mean you have to always be "oh no, whatever you think, whatever you want." I actually think it's really common to have also outbursts of anger, because with people pleasers, that anger is being constantly shoved down.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that, because I do feel that when I was seeking approval, like, are you mad at me? Or people are mad at me. At the same time, I probably understand I can make people think I'm mad at them. That's equally as powerful,
Yeah.
because I understand how powerful that is for me, like how
Totally.
desperately I needed that. Therefore, if I can get people to feel that way too,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
I can sort of lead them to do what they want. So,
And that's what you learned. Of
yeah,
course. Like if that's what we learn of how to receive love and approval, yeah, we're going to model that in an automatic way. And that's where the awareness is so important. Being aware that that can be a pattern or a tendency is the differentiation, I think, between a clinical narcissist and someone who's not, is like there's awareness.
right.
And there's self inquiry.
It just reminds me, because at first I was like, yeah, I don't really seek approval. That's not really me. But as I'm reading it and I'm really thinking, well, I don't think, are you mad at me? But I do seek approval. And I do say to my kids from time to time that, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to get mad. And so that's one way.
Yeah.
And it's so common in our culture to say that sometimes you're not even aware of what you're saying until you say it and you're like, that doesn't sound right. So when I was reading your book, I was reflecting on that, and I thought, yeah, it's showing up differently, but the essence is the same.
Yeah.
So I did want to go on to talk about fawning. You talk about it being a defensive response. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's not a word that we hear often.
Yes. So the Fawn Response, it was coined by a psychologist named Pete Walker in 2013. So it's quite a new thing, but I can start talking about just what it is, and then we can go into sort of how it manifests, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
So our body has 4 responses to a threat that we recognize: fight, flight, which I think a lot of us are familiar with, freeze, and the 4th one is the Fawn Response. So when our body is detecting some sort of threat, whether that threat is real, like there's a lion in front of us, or there's an abuser in front of us, or perceived. So our friend didn't text us back, or our boss said, hey, like that's a perceived threat. There's nothing inherently dangerous in front of us, but it feels dangerous. Doesn't matter. It feels the same to the body. And that is so important, because I think a lot of people sort of negate, well, why would I be feeling this? And physiologically, whether it's, perceived, real, remembered, it feels the same. And so when we are in the fawn response, we appease the threat. We try to please it, satisfy it, impress it, prove ourselves to it. And so the fawn response really says, I can't feel safe until I know you like me. And I can't feel okay until we are okay. So we end up hyper focusing on other people. Do they like me? Did they laugh at my joke? What do they think of me? And we end up completely abandoning ourselves because we're so hyper attuned to what's happening out there. And so this is to say, sometimes we need to fawn. It's an unconscious, brilliant survival strategy. And sometimes we need it, whether it's to please our boss and to get a paycheck, whether it's to belong in a culture, whether it's to gain and cultivate genuine safety. Sometimes we need it. We're pro-social beings. But when we're doing it all the time, when we're doing it in relationships that are safe, like with a loving partner or your best friend, that's when it becomes exhausting, and it leads to resentment and burnout and anxiety in our relationships. So it's a threat response. We're only supposed to be doing it for a few minutes at a time. But for many of us, I think especially women, it's as natural as breathing, because it's the only threat response that we are rewarded for. If you are at work and you are in fighting, flighting, or freezing, you're probably going to have a chat with a higher up person. But when you're in the fawn response, from a young age too, you're such a good girl, you're so easy, you're so agreeable. And So it becomes this cycle of validation. There's
It's
so much I could
almost,
say, but I'll pause there.
yeah, no, it's almost like how Stockholm syndrome works, right? You have to
Yeah.
sort of embrace and identify with the people who have captured you so
Yeah.
that you can be safe. You can be the good person and not get in trouble. And that reminds me, I want to share with you one of the personality assessments I've taken is Hogan. And one part says, what happens when you're triggered, right? You move towards, move against,
Yeah.
or move forward. And that's based on Karen Horning's theory, like fight, flight, or freeze, or
Yeah.
fawn. And I have very high fight response, very high. But at the same time, I have very high diligence, which is what happens when you don't have the approval. So I sort of put myself in the situation where we're fighting. You still see me as the enemy,
Yeah.
but we'd fight. But then I go out of my way to still meet your needs.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it's harmful. I mean, if you fight and just leave, then that's
Yeah.
fine. But
Yeah.
I'd fight and then I'd still do everything you asked and do it even better than you had asked, expected.
Absolutely. To gain that love again, right? To like
Right.
feel close again. If maybe I wonder if is that like after feeling expressing anger after fighting, there's that shame of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. So let me make it up. Let me prove myself again to this person. Does it feel like that?
It's really interesting because I've been thinking about that. I don't know if unconsciously it's that, but it's almost like, you know what? I will show you that I can. I'd love for you to see, oh my God, you are so awesome, but we're in a fight.
Yeah.
Or something along that line. Because I don't know if I consciously want to repair the relationship per se.
Yeah.
But perhaps I do. I am not really sure.
Let me prove to you that I'm worth loving. Even if
Yeah.
we're not going to be in a relationship or that I'm not going to give you that access to me, let me show you what you're missing. If
Exactly.
it's, yeah.
Maybe it's along that line, or just that I am a very valuable person. You just
Yeah.
wait and see.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I do see, and my coach at the time showed the result to me and said, do you see what you're doing? You're sort of putting yourself in a bind because your fight response is so high.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you become super diligent when you're triggered.
Yeah,
So then I
yeah.
realized,
So
oh, that's
interesting.
why I'm so tired all the time.
Oh, yes. It is so tiring. It is so
Right.
it's tiring to be oscillated, to be thrown around by our anger. And I think anger is explosive when it's a lot of moments of anger piled up. And so when I'm working with clients, it's typically changing the relationship to the anger so that when it does come up in the micro moments, we can welcome it, allow it to be there, soothe it so that it's not constantly piling up to lead to a moment of explosion. And let's be real, sometimes we're going to have that. We're human beings. We're not supposed to be perfect at this. And even then, after the fact, I talk about this in the book, is the beauty of repair, to go back to the moment of conflict and to take accountability and to talk about what happened. Many of us who are in this way of being, we learn to, one of the sort of like manifestations of it is we avoid conflict, we avoid hard conversations because we don't want to upset the other person or think that we don't want them to think we disagree with them. So we avoid these things at all costs. But recognizing that a little bit of conflict, a little bit of friction in a relationship is quite healthy because it means that both people can be themselves. And it means that there's enough space and safety in the relationship for people to have differing opinions. And that's a beautiful thing. And if it leads to yelling or, dysregulated conflict, which will happen again because we're human, to be able to come back together is so healing for someone who's stuck in the fawn response. Because I think for many of us, because we witness conflict in really extreme ways, we learn, okay, if I'm in a conflict with someone, the relationship is over. It's ruined. There's no going back. And so to be able to be in a close relationship and to repair together is just so healing for a people-pleasing fawner.
Right. And I think it's so important for all generations to know, really, but the younger generation to understand a healthy relationship would contain fights and conflicts.
Yeah.
And I think when we were younger, well, my parents are divorced and my husband's parents are divorced. So we don't really know how healthy relationships, what the dynamic would look like. And I teach that to my kids consciously. Like, it is okay to have fights. It's exactly what you're saying. And it's okay to have anger. Because when we're younger, it's very confusing. When I was younger, it was very confusing. Is it okay to have this heightened emotion? Is it okay if I just blow up? And that wasn't normal. Or are fights okay? And so I appreciate you saying that. I think it's so important for us to know perfect relationship doesn't mean you don't fight at all.
Totally. And I also think it's always important to distinguish the emotion from the reaction to the emotion. So the anger is totally allowed to be there. It's a human emotion. It's communicating something to us. How we react to that anger is our responsibility. So if we are continuously blowing up and screaming and name calling and we're not taking accountability and it's this pattern, that's something for us to look at. How we react, that's the reaction to the anger. But I think a lot of us conflate. We say, oh, that's anger. But anger itself is the information. It's what I was saying. Something isn't right. A need isn't being met. There's something happening here. That's the anger. And what we do with it is up to us. And we will sometimes do it imperfectly, but we can repair after the fact. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's go back to when people ask, are you mad at me? Or have that internal, that voice on the inside. What do you think they're really asking for? Is it validation, control, safety? When that voice comes up and if we become aware, like, oh, I'm worried. Are people mad at me? Is everything okay? What's really happening on the inside?
If I'm thinking about it broadly, I tend to think of it as it's abandonment at its core. I think similar reassurance-seeking questions like, are you mad at me? Is like, do you still love me? Did I do something wrong? And what those are asking is, if I show you all of me, will you stay? Will you still be here? Or do I need to be perfect for you? Do I need to only show you my on side and this perfect curated version of me? And I think many people who are stuck in this way of being feel very lonely in their relationships because we feel like people only know me when I'm not letting them get to know me. I'm keeping them at an arm's length because I'm only showing them the perfect parts of me. And it's quite lonely. And I talk about the kind of that difference between, are you mad at me as a question is quite reassurance seeking, like you said. I talk about the difference between reassurance versus validation, where when we're asking reassurance, it's quite surface level. Are you mad at me? Do you think I'm pretty? Do you still love me? It's yes or no questions. And then maybe the other person says, yes, I love you. No, I'm not mad at you. Yes, you're pretty. And then for a second, we're like, okay, cool. But then it comes back because we're not actually addressing the underlying emotion. So then maybe we ask it again. The issue is reassurance seeking is also quite addictive. That initial relief and that dopamine of that feels good, but it keeps coming back because we're not getting to the anxiety beneath it. So I think a validation as slowing down with that question. If you're wondering, are you mad at me, to your partner or your friend, slowing down. What's happening here? Is this anxiety? What triggered this? What's going on for you? And maybe if you're choosing to share it with the other person, instead of, are you mad at me? It's, hey, I've been feeling kind of distant from you. We haven't had any quality one-on-one time in a while. And I just wanted to talk about it. That is the same emotion of, are you mad at me? But it's opening up conversation and curiosity. And the person in response might give some reassurance. Oh, of course I'm not mad at you. But it also allows them to feel and talk and for you to understand each other. So that's how I differentiate those two terms.
Right. And sometimes I think we have to distinguish between, am I being oversensitive because I'm insecure, I'm seeking approval,
Yeah,
versus I am really detecting something,
totally. Yeah.
right? I am not a very sensitive person per se. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm that well connected to my emotions, and something that I'm constantly
Mm,
working on. That's what I say. A lot of times I would sense that anger, but it's already, I'm
yeah.
already overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to learn to be more aware of my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes when people do ask me, are you
Yeah.
mad at me? It's helpful for me, because then I notice, actually, I am.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Uh-huh.
What you did was a little upsetting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I may not have noticed myself. That wasn't in my consciousness,
Yeah.
but I was really reacting to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think asking that question, not in a approval seeking way,
Yeah.
like every 3 seconds, are you mad? Everything
Yeah.
okay? But in a way that's really honest and curious and sincere,
Yes.
like, is everything okay? Are you
Absolutely.
mad? And that's being helpful for me.
Totally. From a place of it's opening conversation. And that I think that's such an important distinction is it coming from you just want to hear me say no, I'm not mad at you, or are you actually asking? You're actually asking if we are okay. But it's such a good point when we've learned, especially if we grew up in homes that were volatile, there was anger, things were unpredictable, you were kind of walking on eggshells, you were kind of holding your breath a lot of the time. Know that you are going to be hypersensitive to mood shifts and you're going to be hyper attuned to it. And it's hard because sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. And so, regardless of whether it is, the most important thing is to first pause and look in because normally when we're in this way of being, we're hyper vigilant, we're immediately seeking external validation and approval so that we feel okay again. But when we're healing this pattern, we're slowing down. We're slowing down, we're looking in, we're understanding what's happening. Maybe we're spending some time with that emotion. And then maybe we are saying, I'm feeling like things aren't okay. Are we okay? And maybe we do end up having the conversation and maybe we let it pass because it's more us than them. So
Hmm.
it's nuanced and it's case by case, but it's an important distinction.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What you said really made me think. Growing up in a household that's kind of volatile, you're looking out, you become hypersensitive because you want to protect yourself, right? You want to predict
Totally.
what's going
Yeah.
on. I kind of remember when I was younger, I was more sensitive.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting because I don't know when, at certain point, I became very distant to my feelings
Mm.
or that sensitivity. And
Yeah.
so now I need to make that connection again. Or I
Mm.
think in my late 30s and early 40s, after I became a mother,
Yeah.
and kids were growing up, and I start to notice that. And
Mm.
so it's making effort to reconnect that. So I
Yeah.
thought it was really interesting. You can go from being hypersensitive to, you know what, I'm shutting it down.
Oh,
And it
totally.
becoming just, I am just focusing on me. So then I don't tune in to other people's emotion and I don't
Totally.
care. Yeah.
And that's so self-protective. And whether it's because we are people pleasing or because we're shutting down, either way we are abandoning ourselves. Either way we are fully shutting off from our inner world, however it's showing up for you. And so either way that practice is to come back. However, it's to come back. This is so important, especially if you have a history of trauma, to come back in small, safe ways. Because if you were like, okay, I'm going to really get to know my emotions, I'm going to sit and meditate for 1 hour straight, and then I'll really know myself, that's going to feel so agitating to your body. It's not going to feel safe. As opposed to, let me sit here for 1 minute and just take a few deep breaths. That's the path forward because if we're going really far into our emotions too quickly, it's going to feel quite shocking to the body, and the body's going to be like, what are we doing? This felt awful. Let's go back to shutting down or fawning or whatever it is. So starting safe, starting small, and slowly increasing our tolerance to be with that discomfort is so important. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah. And I do think it's important for people to know, because I think when you look at people who are obviously seeking approval or saying, are you mad at me? Is everything okay? You sort of see them as more vulnerable, or you can perceive that as being weaker than, let's say, I have no emotion. I don't care what people think.
Yeah.
Right? I'm focused on myself. But I did want to mention, I think both are defense mechanisms, and both
Totally.
are
Oh, yeah.
healthy. It just, one is being perceived in the world
Yeah.
as being stronger. So I did want to share my own case to demonstrate that. I don't think it's healthy. And I think what you said is right, because you're abandoning yourself. You're
Yeah.
not tuning to your own emotions, and your emotions are so important. They're
Yeah.
data, right?
Totally. And what you're saying is really important, of that like fawn or freeze of shutting down. It's, we're preserving our energy, we're disconnecting. The fawn response has some freeze on a nervous system level. There is some freeze happening because we are leaving ourselves. I think it's just kind of a spectrum of how it shows up for people, but fully they're both defense mechanisms. Sometimes we need it, sometimes it's maladaptive, and having awareness of it is the most important first step. So,
Yeah, absolutely. When you talked about fawning, you first have to perceive a threat, or we first have to perceive a threat. And you said it could be just your boss like looking at you and go, hey, we need to talk, or someone rolling their eyes or coughing or like just giving you the cold shoulders. But that's a perception, right? How
Yeah.
perceiving an action as that's a cold shoulder, right? So can we talk a little bit about perception? Because
Yes.
fawning, it's first perceiving a threat, then reacting to it. So it's really a two-step deal. So how do we help ourselves when we continue to perceive everything as threats?
Well, it's a really good point, and it's important to know that when we are in this state of survival mode, everything will feel like a threat, even when it's not. And so we can't always trust our perceptions in that way, but it doesn't really matter to the body, because the body's still going to react in this unconscious way. I think it's really important to understand too that we're seeing the world through the lens of our beliefs. And those beliefs are formed in childhood, via society, often during our early years. We can rewire them, but those core beliefs exist. And so if our belief is, I'm not lovable, I'm going to be abandoned in my relationships, these are unconscious. It's not like we're consciously thinking these words to ourselves. We're going to see interactions and relationships through that lens. And the brain is actually scanning our environment for information to prove that to be true. What's really crazy about the brain is that there is so much information, we aren't seeing it all. We couldn't possibly take in all the information that we're seeing. We're taking in what our brain is looking for. And this isn't to say what you're seeing isn't true. Sometimes people are mad at you. Sometimes people are annoyed at you. And sometimes we're seeing it through that lens of fear because we've had to for self-protection. So it can be tricky. I have a chapter called Nothing is Personal for a reason, because everything feels personal when we're stuck in the fawn response.
Yeah.
It feels like something's wrong with me. People don't like me. It's my fault. We're self-blaming all the time, and recognizing that we're all seeing the world through the lens of our beliefs, our fears, our biases, and we're all busy and thinking about ourselves, and no one's really thinking about us as much as we think they are. I find that to be helpful, just to kind of zoom out a little bit.
Yeah. And I think your chapter on that, it almost reminds me of the Buddhist philosophy, like detachment.
Yeah.
Right. So it's taking the ego, the me out of the equation. So that chapter is definitely helpful for people
Thank you.
who are detecting threats everywhere.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
can't control how you perceive things, and
Absolutely.
you become aware of that. Everything is
Yeah.
perceived as a threat.
And with that Buddhist principle and thought is also seeing those thoughts as an observer, where the mind may be saying to you, they're mad at me, or maybe they hate me, or why did I say that? And healing doesn't mean those thoughts are going to go away. Those thoughts may still be there, but we can have some distance between ourselves and the thoughts so that we can see it a bit more clearly of, oh, there's that story again. Okay. And it's not that we're trying to silence that part of ourselves, because this is a part that is trying to protect us and keep us safe. We're creating a relationship to it. And I find that to be a big misconception in this healing work, is like, I shouldn't be anxious then, or like I shouldn't have critical thoughts. And no, because if this part that is people pleasing is a younger version of you that has learned to do this, aren't we really saying to that younger version, get out of here? What's wrong with you? I don't want you around. So we're creating a relationship to this younger version of ourselves that is working really hard to keep us safe. Sometimes we need that part, sometimes we don't. But we're not trying to get rid of it. We're trying to actually allow it to be there and have a relationship with it.
Yeah, take care of your inner child, right? That's working hard to protect you. So the two parts is understand, maybe have a different way of perceiving things, working on that, and then working on the reaction.
Yeah, and I think that they happen really quickly. Like how we are perceiving it, we may not always be able to control. Like how, for example, if you say a joke at a party and you think, oh, they didn't laugh as hard as I wanted them to laugh, that perception, it's hard. It can get quite intellectualized if we're like, did that happen or what? Let me sift through this. I think regardless of the process that's happening, all we're doing to start is inserting a pause between that trigger and the reaction itself. So if the trigger is no one laughed at my joke, and then our normal reaction would be like, ha, sorry, oh, are we okay? Or it's seeking reassurance. It's inserting a pause between the trigger and the reaction so that we can slow down, take a pause, and choose a response instead. Our reactions are a window into our past wounds. We're usually reacting in a way that we have historically, and that's protected us. And a response is rooted in the present. It's we're consciously choosing. We're in this moment choosing a reaction, choosing a response. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I do want to talk about inner child, but before that, I remembered a story you either wrote in your book or I heard in your interview. My brain is almost up. But you talked about you buying towels and not knowing what color you like. That was a very powerful story. Can you share that story?
Yeah. Yes. And this is speaking, I'll share it and prefacing it of a sort of result of chronic people pleasing and seeking approval is it can leave us feeling like, I don't even know who I am. Who am I when I'm not pleasing other people? And so I had graduated college and I was looking for towels for my shoebox apartment in New York. And I remember I remember this so clearly. I remember being in the towel section and looking at all the colors and thinking, I don't even know what my favorite color is. And I think it was one of those first moments where I'm choosing things for me. Like this was my home, my space, which was new to me. And I get to make the decisions and no one else is perceiving it or no one else is looking at it. It's just for me. And thinking to myself, oh, okay, let me go on Instagram and see what other people like. And then I had this other thought of, who am I? Am I just a medley of other people's personalities? Am I just taking what other people like and mixing it in and calling it me? And who am I when I'm not pleasing other people? And it's a kind of like silly story, but it speaks to this existential inquiry, I think, that happens when we're constantly abandoning ourselves. Which is, do I exist? And who I think we naturally all, as pro-social beings, of course, how we are with our best friend is going to be a little different from who we are with our boss, of course. Right. But in my book, I have different archetypes of people pleasers, one of which is the chameleon. And that if we're always morphing ourselves and shape shifting to match whoever we're with, and we're never returning to who we are, it can feel very, very lonely and can lead to a lot of, I felt a lot of shame for that feeling. I felt like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. Like, I don't know who I am. For me, the inquiry or the process of coming back to that version, I think, like healing in general, it's a lifelong process. Who we are isn't fixed. I think we're always changing. When we're returning to ourselves, that person is shifting all the time. I think it's coming back to, who am I right now? Who is this person today? But for me, I think meditation was really important, has been really important. Silence, spending time with myself without distraction over the past decade has been extremely helpful. I also think in simple ways, it can be pausing and asking ourselves, what do I think of this? What am I feeling right now? What do I need right now? Whereas normally maybe we'd think, what do they need? What do they think? What will they think of this? Or maybe we're trying on a clothing item in a dressing room and we immediately send it to a friend. Should I buy this? Pause. Do you like it? How do you feel in it? So it can happen in simple ways. And I also think another aspect of sort of that coming back to ourselves is, who were you as a kid? Who were you as a child before you learned that something was wrong with you? What did you like to do with your time? Who was that person? And there's such an innocence to that. There's such a purity. And I find clinically, I see this, and personally, I see this. I find so much of healing is really coming back to who we were as kids before that conditioning really kicked in. And that's really sweet to me. I like that a lot.
I think I start to notice that when I had kids. I have 3 kids. And I remember when we go out to dinners, you always have friends who are like, oh, I don't eat this, I don't eat that. But then you always have people like, oh, I never have any preferences. I'll eat anything.
Yes.
Right? Then I start to raise my kids and I go, no, you can't, they know what they like, what they don't like. And every kid is different. So to say, I'll eat anything, I don't have any preference. It could be just being polite. Or that you really train yourself to be able to like everything. And I remember the movie, The Runaway Bride, which I actually wrote in my book, which I thought it was such a fascinating case. Do you remember that movie? Have you seen that by Julia Roberts?
I've heard of it, but you'll have to remind me of the premise.
Okay. So she is obviously a beautiful woman, but she just runs away at weddings in a small town. So she's known as the runaway bride. She falls in love with men. And so this journalist, Richard Gere, becomes very interested in her story and goes to the little town. And one question he asks all of the fiancés or the ex-fiancés is, what kind of eggs does she like? And every fiancé said, she prefers eggs the way I like it. It's sunny side up, it's scrambled, it's omelet, it's whatever. So he just found that so interesting. And towards the end, he asked her, like, what do you really like? Like, how do you like your eggs cooked? And I think that's the archetype that you talk about, being a chameleon. It's I'm just changing myself to fit others and to and these we talked about in the very beginning, these are hypersensitive people, like hypersensitive to other people's needs and wants and what's happening with other people, but not with themselves. That hypersensitivity seems to be only applying to the outside world for safety, right?
Yeah. And I think the common rebuttal to that is like, so what? Am I just going to only be focused on myself? Am I only going to be like, am I going to be so difficult of a person? And no, it just means being connected to our own needs and preferences and opinions while also being in relationship to other people. And to me, like that is how we can feel close to people, is when we also know ourselves. I think how close we can get to other people is a mirror into how close we are to ourselves in our inner world. In other words, if we had a friend and we were always just like, what do you want to do this weekend? Oh, whatever you want. Or what do you want for dinner? Whatever you want. Versus letting them know I love Thai food or I love to go to museums, or communicating your preferences is them getting to know you.
Yeah.
It's them understanding who you are as a person. And so if we don't know those things about ourselves, how can someone else know that about us? And how can they be close to us? How can they think of us? How can they do acts of service for us if we don't even know what we like or what we want?
Right.
So I think that process of understanding what's going on internally is just so crucial for inner healing and also relational healing. We can't really go anywhere unless we don't have that as a starting place.
Yeah. Have that center, right? Center of gravity that's holding you like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I am valuable. I have the right to express myself. It
Yeah.
almost sounds like that. In my last recording with Dr. Ramani, we talked a lot about narcissistic personality disorder. And it just almost feels like people who are hypersensitive to other people's needs or seeking approval. When you're not aware, you can be manipulated, or people like who has NPD are super attracted to you because you are looking to me for approval all the time, right?
Totally.
So it's the perfect scenario for them.
And vice versa. The fawner is often very attracted to the narcissistic type or the emotionally unavailable type, because two reasons. Often mirrors childhood. Many of us who have learned to people please maybe grew up with parental figures who had those patterns as well. And so anything that is familiar will feel like home, even if it's bad for us. Unconsciously, we're going to be drawn to people that remind us of those early relationships simply because familiar feels safe in many ways.
Yeah, can you please elaborate a little bit on that? Because I know that in theory, but I have people asking me and challenging me and said, but it was so painful in childhood. Why would I find that comforting? But it is the mechanism. Like if I hate it, I said, I never want to date someone like my dad, or like I would never. And then I end up dating someone exactly like him. What's happening there?
Well, it's trauma reenactment. What that means is, and know that this is happening unconsciously. So like, I think many of us try to intellectually work through that. We're like, but I don't want to be married to my dad. So why would I seek someone out? It's not happening on a conscious level. The brain it thinks very black or white. We think this is safe, this is not safe. This is familiar, this is not familiar. And so simply because someone is reminding us of a parental relationship, that's going to feel safe because it's familiar, but also because we think to ourselves unconsciously, I know how to be in this relationship. I may not be happy, but I know how to do this. I know how to be with someone that's angry and critical because I've seen it before. Versus think about it, if you've grew up with an angry, critical caregiver and then you're now dating someone who's super loving and steady, you don't know how to be with that person. You don't know, how do I let in this praise? How do I let myself be loved? That's a new experience. And so simply because we like to know, we like to feel in control, we like to predict how things are going to go, it's just basic brain, how the brain works. Also, if you think about our beliefs, if we grew up with a figure that had narcissistic tendencies, our core belief that comes from that is, I need to work really hard to be loved. I need to earn this. And so, you may not be unconsciously drawn to someone that seems like your parent, but do you have to work hard to be loved by that person? So that's why a lot of people who are resonate with the Fawn Response are drawn to pretty emotionally unavailable people, because they learn, okay, I need to like prove myself to this person. I need to work super hard. I need to do more in order to earn this. And I want to be really clear, when we're unconsciously drawn to people, please don't shame yourself for that. That's just you being a person. What we can do is, what I often work on with clients is, let's actually just make it a conscious process. So if a client is dating someone and they're like, is this bad? Should I not be drawn to this person? Is it okay? Explore it. why are you drawn to this person? What do you find attractive about them? When they take a while to text you back, does that make you want them more? Does it make you want them less? Being curious about these unconscious patterns, bringing them into the conscious mind, I think is a beautiful starting point for that.
Yeah. That reminds me, you had talked about your relationship with your husband, who you met when you were 19, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So your husband's very different
Yes.
than the type of relationship that you've had maybe with your father, because he was very loving and he wasn't angry at you all the time.
Totally.
Can you talk a little bit about that adjustment in this completely new relationship? What are some of the things that you had to work on or sort of get used to make that relationship work? Because I can see how people would abandon that, even if it's good for them.
Totally.
But it's just uncomfortable.
I think we often think like, oh, when I meet that loving person, I'll just like melt into them and it will feel so easy to be with that person. And it's not, because it's new. Like we were saying, it's unfamiliar. I think even at 19, I was aware of my dad and his patterns and what I didn't want to repeat in a relationship. I was already thinking about that. Did I expect to meet that future husband at 19? Absolutely not. But when we met and we immediately had a connection, and I was like, oh gosh, this feels like something is really here. I became so aware of my mind at that time. I think that was a really big pivotal point. I was beginning to meditate at that age as well. But it was this really interesting moment in time where my thoughts were not aligning with my heart or my body. Like my thoughts were saying, oh gosh, like just you wait, he's going to flip any second now, or you don't trust this, or you're not good enough for him, you're too damaged for him. These were the thoughts that were coming up for me. But my intuition, my whatever you want to call it, I had this gut feeling of safety and things felt really good. So I felt so confused. Like I was like, I don't know what to trust. Is this intuition? Is it anxiety? What's happening for me here? And that's where I actually got really into stream of consciousness journaling. I would just write down all my anxious thoughts so that I could look at them and be like, is this true? Is this not? But it did take adjusting, and that is okay. I think this is such an important part of trauma healing. We're not just going to heal intellectually by saying to ourselves, it's okay, this is safe, I'm safe. In order for us to heal relational trauma, which is being in relationship to other people, we have to give ourselves new experiences that feel safe to our body. And so in order for me to heal my paternal wound of feeling like I can't be safe with a man, in order to heal that, I had to show myself new experiences of being in a relationship that did feel safe. And so it's not like we can only heal just alone or like by telling ourselves the right things. We heal by being in safe relationships to other people. And of course, and being alone and solitude and self-inquiry and all of those things. And true deep healing happens when we can be in safe relationships with people. But that does require an adjustment period of like, this feels scary, and will you leave me? And is this okay? Can I trust this? And moving through that discomfort. It's hard, super hard.
Yeah. I had so many thoughts. One of the things that you said was healing intellectually. And I think a lot of people that I've met, including myself when I was younger, was we read a lot of self-help books.
Yes. Yeah.
We understand all of these concepts. But just like you said, when you perceive a threat that happens in a millisecond, right? It's a reaction that your body has.
Yeah.
And sometimes your intellect doesn't have time to step in.
Totally.
So healing, it's not just intellectually. And I think a lot of people tend to believe that, or at least the way they heal themselves is through that, through knowledge. And I think knowledge is great. Reading your book, it's super helpful, but at the same time, you got to do the work. And the work, it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, how do I write a self-help book that says that? It's like, how do I write a self-help book that isn't saying these words will heal you, but actually slowing down and practicing the things that I'm saying in the book and sitting with them and feeling the emotion from the neck down and being with the sensations in your body and being how to be in relationships with people. That is the healing. And yes, totally right. Knowledge is so wonderful, but it's also how we integrate that, how we live that. Having experiences in our lives, showing ourselves that we can be uncomfortable and safe at the same time. But it's a defense mechanism to intellectualize as well, because if we're only thinking about it, we're not feeling it. And I think for many of us, we've learned it's unsafe for me to feel anger or grief or sadness. And so if I'm thinking about it, I feel productive. I feel like I'm doing something, but I'm avoiding the discomfort that's beneath it. And so it's very self-protective to intellectualize. And by slowly allowing ourselves to feel it and slow down with it, that's where the real healing is.
Yeah, that's my work. I mean, it's been
Same,
since
all
like
of us.
early 40s. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing that I love that you said is that healing also happens in relationships. It doesn't happen in silo. I've witnessed people say, I can't be in relationships. I'm damaged. I need to work on myself first, or I should never be in relationships because I don't think I'm good at it. The concept of, well, I need to go alone and heal and get better, then get back into the world. It's rather unrealistic and honestly not necessarily helpful. And so I love that you brought it up, that sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you still have to interact with people. And relationship can help you.
Absolutely. And I think it's a healthy balance of both. I think does that mean you're going from relationship to relationship and never looking inward and being alone? Of course not. But it's having both, of having time for self-inquiry and silence and being with yourself, and not letting the belief that I'm too this to be loved, I'm too deficient, I'm too damaged, I'm too this. To actually heal that belief is showing that belief otherwise. I don't need to be perfect to be loved. I'm allowed to be going through something and to receive love at the same time. That is so healing, because that's what the core belief is like, I need to be perfect to be loved. Proving it otherwise is huge. So it's a bit meta, I think, in many ways. Yeah.
Well, to give our audience a little bit of hope, if they are in this situation right now, how long do you think it took you in your healthy relationship to sort of stop or eventually decrease the frequency of checking in? Like, is everything okay? Are you mad at me?
Yeah.
When does that sort of become more not the core driver?
Yeah.
How you behave, but it's just, I don't want to say regular, but to
The
a
default's
healthy,
different.
right, the
Yeah.
default.
Yeah,
Changing
totally.
that default mode.
Yeah, I think first, like, shedding that belief that it is this like transformation that's happening. It's so subtle. I find that it's such subtle differences of like, it'll be moments of, oh, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would feel such tension in this moment, or I would feel so triggered by this, and now I don't. It's subtle moments like that. It's happening over time. It's happening slowly, but any time that you're being aware of this and you're moving through discomfort and you're self-soothing, you are healing. And even if you're not seeing the kind of result right now, you are exercising that muscle. And so it's not going to be this like checkbox, okay, I'm healed, now I can be in relationship to people. I think it's a continuous thing. Old wounds are always there. I have grief that still comes up. I have anger that still comes up. but I'm able to move through it a lot differently now. And so it's hard to say like in this timing you'll feel different, but
Right.
because I think it looks different for everyone, but it's subtle and it's slow, and pay attention to the little shifts and celebrate those. When we're in survival mode, we have a sense of urgency. We're like, fix me. Tell me how to be better. Tell me how to fix myself. I have witnessed this in myself, and I witness it clinically as well. And actually, the healing happens when we can slow down. And so even just shedding this belief that that you need to be fixed, or that something is wrong with you and you need to read this like magical thing that will fix you, or you need to go to this magical therapist that will heal you. It's not ever going to be that. It's really a daily practice of being with ourselves, of slowing down, of releasing that urgency in the first place. And that's really where the healing lies.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. We talked about at first, maybe there is no boundary. You let other people's emotions come in because you're seeking approval, right?
Yeah.
And then we talked about, well, you don't want to heal by yourself also all the
Yeah.
time. You do need to interact with people.
Yeah.
But then we talked about narcissistic personalities that these people are sort of drawn to. So how do you set up that boundary
Yeah.
when you're trying to navigate? Like, I don't want to be alone all the time. I need to be in relationships, but
Yes.
might be attracted to narcissistic people. Like, what do I do?
Yeah. I think boundaries are quite misunderstood, I think, in how we talk about them, or I think we often hear about them in quite a cold way, or we think that they're only about cutting people off. And I actually think it's not that. I think it's sure, boundaries can be to protect us in abusive relationships, and that is so important. It's so its own thing. And also, boundaries are also to strengthen our relationships as well, because they're really saying, this is how I can be in a relationship with you long term. Because when we're never setting boundaries, we're always saying yes, but then we feel secretly resentful, and we're like having fake arguments with the other person in the mirror, or like, we're driving, we're imagining these scenarios. That's usually a sign that there's some resentment and that there's a need that isn't being met. When we can communicate to the other person, this is what I need, and this is important to me, or when we can communicate that to the other person, we're able to be in the relationship for a while, versus if we are constantly abandoning ourselves and we're always saying yes when we want to say no, the relationship won't last for that long. We're going to pull back, we're going to ghost them, we're going to feel like so resentful, I can't even be friends with this person anymore. So it's really saying to the other person, this is how we can be close. And that is such a beautiful thing. It's such an act of emotional intimacy to let people into what you need. That's how I think of boundaries.
No, I absolutely agree. And I do organizational work, and I always tell people, you think stating boundary, it's sounding harsh. But without it, every second you're wondering, can I do this? Is this against the company law or not? So without those policies, without those boundaries, you're left to your own devices and guessing, like, is this a threat? Is it not? So I absolutely agree with you. Boundary is not a cold thing. It's there to help us.
Yes.
Right? If I know Meg won't pick up the phone after 9 p.m., I'm not going to get upset if she doesn't reply my text.
Absolutely. It's
Right?
soothing.
So,
it's soothing to know what to expect from the other person. And that's why I think maintenance is the most important step of a boundary, being consistent. It's really nice. It's nice to be, I think, in relationships where the person is really a clear, direct, honest communicator. It can feel a little unsettling at first if you're a people pleaser, because you're like, whoa, you're not people pleasing with me. You're just telling me how you feel. But when you're settled into that relationship, those are the best ones, because you're able to just be like, I know if you're upset with me, you're going to tell me, and I don't need to read your mind. What a gift.
Really, what a gift.
You don't need to be a mind reader. It's like the biggest relief. So it's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I think there's a Chinese saying that directly translates to ugly words come first. And I think it really is just people who are starting to set boundaries, who are afraid that other people might be upset, would sort of preface it that by using that saying, hey,
Yeah.
ugly words come first. Okay. We
I
got to
like that.
say what's really
Yeah.
important to us, what our boundaries are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And being that, to me, that's the difference between nice versus compassionate. Is like nice might be like, no worries, no, it's totally fine. But then on the inside, you're like, how dare they? I can't believe that. Oh my gosh. But compassion, I think, is there's an authenticity. It's what I'm saying, I mean it. And I'm saying yes because I want to. And you can really trust that. And so I feel like being honest, being clear, being direct, that is so compassionate because how we're feeling is aligning with how we're acting. And it allows us, as we've talked about today, allows us to be closer in our relationships.
Yeah. So we talked about how to be closer in relationships. What about the relationship that it's beyond resolving? Meaning,
Yeah.
there are people who are just always going to be mad at you.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
their own issue. They're mad at themselves. They're mad at the world. They'll never love you the way that you want them to.
Yeah.
And this is especially hard. If it's your boss, that's fine. You can move or change jobs. But if it is someone you love, like your parents,
Yeah.
what do you do and how do you move on from that?
Yeah. I always say in seeing the situation, you're either in looking at it, in saying what's happening here, in having, whether it's having that hard conversation or whether it's realizing I can't have this hard conversation, we're either going to have closeness in the relationship. The person will say, oh, thank you so much for telling me that. I'm so glad you were honest. You came to me about this. Or especially in relationships that maybe they aren't receptive to it, we're going to have clarity on what we can expect from the other person, clarity on maybe what we need to let go of and grieve in that relationship. And we then learn in those relationships, I can't have an honest conversation. It's actually not worth it for me to tell them how I'm feeling. That's the clarity. And so then it's more of an internal shift. What do I need to let go of? Where do I need to shift my expectations? Maybe I'm calling my parent hoping that they're gonna listen or they'll give me the love that I want, and maybe I need to seek that elsewhere. And so we get clarity on what needs to change in the relationship, but often it's an internal shift of what we need to sort of release our grip on so that we can move forward and find it somewhere else.
Yeah. But once you have that clarity, I imagine that to be such a sad moment.
Totally.
Because before you'd have something to work towards you. If I only just got better grades, or if I've done more, achieved more, if I could change myself a little more,
Yeah.
I'd get that love. And when you do have that clarity, you know what? Nothing I do will ever be good enough.
Yeah.
Then what do you do? Like at that point, it's great to have that clarity.
Yeah.
But you sort of have to start letting that go and go through a different process.
You're speaking to an important part of the process, which is grief. And I have a entire chapter on grief because I think it's so important. And I wanted the book to mirror my personal process and what I witness with clients, like acknowledging what is happening here and then grieving what isn't. I think we talk about grief a lot. It's recognized a lot with people, obviously, that have passed away. I think what's less talked about is grieving relationships with people that are alive and well, but grieving what those relationships will never be, and grieving the parent that they can't be for you, an ex, a friend, a sibling relationship, whatever relationship it is. I think of it as like this longing. I think for people that don't have that parental relationship that they wish they did, they may resonate with that. It's like this ache for this longing, this wanting something, but it just isn't that. That grief is so important. We can't just jump straight to acceptance without first acknowledging the pain that's there. And grief comes in waves. It's not a one and done deal. And I'm still grieving my relationships. I shared it in my acknowledgments. My dad actually passed away 3 days after I turned in my manuscript for the book, which was so shocking and so hard. And I'm still making sense of it. But it was so weird because in the book, I talk about my mom because she has Alzheimer's and she started showing symptoms of it when I was 19. She's still alive, but she's toward the end of her life. And so I talk a lot about my grieving her. And it was so weird that he passed first, but I wrote a whole book, or I talked about in my book that grieving her and grappling with her mortality. But I also in the book talked about grieving him, not knowing he was going to pass, but grieving what I wish we could have had. And with the Fawn Response, we have this belief of if I just try harder, and maybe if I'm just a better daughter, if I just call more, or if I'm more perfect, I accomplish more, then I'll be good enough. And then I can earn the love of this parent. And the grief to me, that's the grief. Cutting that last thread that if it's you just change more, then you'll be enough. No, nothing you do will change this person. They have to do that on their own. And that's a painful thing because I think as children, we find safety in that fantasy of who we want them to be. And so grieving is really letting go of that childlike fantasy of who we want the parent to be. So it's a messy process. It's a human process, and it's a really important one in the healing journey.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing your personal story with us. I like my kids sometimes when we talk and they'll say, that sounds like a you problem. And I love that they say that because we sometimes need to tell ourselves that in certain relationships, like, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
That sounds like a you problem.
Oh, yeah.
Just stepping away and say, that sounds like a you problem, but I will grieve for the relationship that we'll never be able to have.
Yes. And so often we look to the people that have hurt us the most to validate our pain, to tell us to apologize. If they apologize, if they change, if they take accountability, then I can heal. That may never happen. And so to take healing into our own hands, to allow ourselves to grieve is empowering. It's painful, but it's very empowering because it's what allows us to move forward.
Yeah. So that closure may never come, but the closure you can have, it's with yourself. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Meg. This has been such a helpful conversation. I'm hoping it will be helpful for my audience too. Love this book, Are You Mad at Me? This book doesn't read like most self-help books because I think you're writing it from your own personal journey.
Yeah.
So I really think it reads a little differently. It's more personal. And so thank you for writing that.
Oh,
and
I appreciate
thank you for
that.
coming on my show.
That means so much to me, you saying that. That was my hope, was that it felt like I was there with the reader. And thank you for having me. This was such a wonderful conversation.